Summer 2000. Crowds clash with police lines in the streets of a Portsmouth suburb. It's a scene of shattered glass, burning vehicles, and vigilante groups marching on the homes of suspected sex offenders. The national press quickly labelled this area, Paulsgrove, as Britain's roughest estate. More than 2 decades later, that reputation is so cemented that vloggers still travel here expecting a war zone, pointing their cameras at council houses like they're on an urban safari. But when a community erupts into sustained, organised unrest, it rarely happens in a vacuum. The events of August 2000 were the flashpoint, but the pressure leading up to them had been building for 50 years. To understand Paulsgrove, you have to look past the crime statistics. This area began as one of the most ambitious emergency urban planning experiments in British history, constructed directly over ancient Saxon chalklands. The riots were a symptom. The true origins of that anger are baked into the very concrete and steel the neighborhood was built from. For centuries, Paulsgrove was a tiny, isolated farming hamlet. It sat quietly at the base of Portsdown Hill, a massive chalk ridge overlooking Portsmouth Harbor, home to fewer than 50 people. During the Second World War, the military carved a secret radio station directly into the white chalk pits high above those few farmhouses. When Allied troops waded onto the Normandy beaches on D-Day, the very first signals confirming their success were beamed back across the channel and received right here, inside the Paulsgrove Hill. The hamlet had quietly helped win the war, but the physical devastation left behind by that conflict would completely erase Paulsgrove's rural identity. German bombing raids devastated Portsmouth, leveling entire districts. Over 13,000 homes were destroyed or severely damaged, leaving the city with a massive, immediate crisis. 11,000 displaced families with nowhere to live. In 1945, the city council took radical action. They purchased 100 acres of Paulsgrove farmland for about £100,000 and drafted a blueprint to build 3,000 emergency homes. They relied heavily on non-traditional construction, specifically British Iron and Steel Federation, or BFEST houses. A small crew could erect a steel skeleton and bolt on the metal cladding in a matter of days, completely bypassing the need for bricklayers. For the families stepping out of the rubble, this was a working-class utopia. They traded cramped, bombed-out slums for a garden city layout, featuring indoor bathrooms, hot running water, electricity, and private gardens. The city had solved its immediate crisis. However, many of these prefabricated units were designed with a strict 10-year lifespan. They were meant to be a temporary bandage, but the city left them in place. As the decades rolled on, the physical reality of living in expired emergency housing set in. The steel components corroded, roofs leaked, and condensation gathered as the non-traditional materials structurally decayed. Then, urban planners physically isolated the estate. The construction of the M275 motorway in the 1970s created a massive concrete barrier, literally walling Paulsgrove off from the economic center of Portsmouth. Cut off from the city, the local economy stalled. Portsmouth's naval bases shrank, taking thousands of stable jobs with them, and Paulsgrove's deprivation metrics climbed well above the national average. Residents found themselves trapped in decaying mid-century prefabs, disconnected from city resources, and increasingly ignored by local authorities. The neighborhood became a pressure cooker of marginalized people forced to rely entirely on each other. Academic studies later showed this systemic frustration acted as an 18-month slow fuse. When a national tabloid published the locations of suspected sex offenders in the summer of 2000, that long-standing feeling of abandonment finally caught a spark. 50 years of structural neglect and isolation turned the August 2000 protests into an inevitable explosion, a community demanding the basic protection they felt they had been denied for decades. The news vans eventually packed up and left Paulsgrove. The residents stayed. Instead of fracturing, the community organized. Residents formed local partnerships and grassroots groups to maintain the social safety nets that the original urban planners had failed to build. Today, local institutions anchor the neighborhood. Places like St. Paul's Catholic Primary School consistently earn good ratings from inspectors, deliberately fostering a diverse, supportive environment where children thrive. The aging housing stock is finally seeing targeted regeneration. While many of the original steel-framed houses endure with heavy modifications, The council is now building specialized, high-efficiency eco-homes equipped with solar panels right on the estate. The government recently allocated up to £20 million in long-term investment for the area. The crucial detail is who controls it. The program is driven entirely by independent boards of Paulsgrove residents, keeping the decision-making strictly local. In 1945, this estate was built as a temporary emergency measure to save the displaced people of Portsmouth. Decades later, the people of Paulsgrove had to learn how to save themselves. Paulsgrove survives today as a testament to working-class endurance. Every city has a neighborhood written off by outsiders as rough or broken, but if you look at the foundations they were built on, you will usually find a community fighting incredibly hard to hold its ground.